So, Ollie, thanks very much for joining us. I'd like to talk to you today a little bit about your journey with Roxhill and HubSpot. So, why you guys decided to invest in HubSpot, how that's been, the things that you've learned along the way, and hopefully this
Okay.
will be really useful for potential customers of HubSpot to decide how it can actually add value to their business. So, thanks very much for talking to me. I suppose we should start by just if you could tell us a little bit about your role and the great work that Roxhill does.
Okay. I joined Roxhill as an external advisor in about 2019, which was coincidental with them deciding to move from Capsule to HubSpot. And we'll come back to the reason for that. And then I joined full time during COVID. I run the commercial side of the business, so sales, marketing, and account management. We are a subscription based business. We sell annual subscriptions to our database, which is a database for PRs, marketing organizations, and corporates to look at what journalists are writing about. So we cover 160,000 journalists in the UK and another 70,000 journalists in the US, plus about the same number across Europe. We follow what they write about, what they tweet about, outlets they're published in. But you're very familiar with that, Adam, having been in the PR world yourself once. We'll perhaps come back to that's part of the reason why we chose BBD Boom.
You mentioned Capsule. So, what was Capsule doing for you, and what was it not doing for you in the sense that you decided it was time to move to another system?
As I say, that decision was made about the time I joined. I wasn't really involved in that decision, but it's been summarized to me that Capsule was a very good outbound marketing product. But what it didn't do was manage the sales operations from marketing through to actually, engaging with a client, with a potential target, recording those interactions, and then from those interactions, taking targets through the sales funnel, onboarding them as a client, and importantly, in the subscription-based business where we have greater than 90% client retention, ongoing account management. Whereas HubSpot provides all three of those, from the marketing, the lead generation, through the nurturing phase of sales, into the engagement, signing the client up, and the ongoing account management.
Wow. Okay. So it was hitting all those key elements of customer engagement. What was it? What was it like in the early days of bringing HubSpot in, and how did you go about implementing it?
There was a lift and shift, which was again before I joined. And I think at that stage, we didn't stop as a business and review our processes. We also didn't really look at what HubSpot offered. And if HubSpot had a field, using an example, start date, and we had a field called subscription start date, we would set up a bespoke field in HubSpot. And then when the HubSpot team were running workflows off their default setting, we had our own setting, and we were duplicating an awful lot of workflows and an awful lot of fields, but you'll be aware of that. That's part of the work you helped us with. So we didn't really stop and look at the full feature set of what HubSpot offered. We implemented it without thinking through how we need to change our processes.
Which is fair enough, I suppose, because it's a bit of a job, isn't it? If it's I'm going to lift and shift from this system to this system, or I'm going to spend a lot of time thinking about how we can optimize our process. Before we do that, lots of people go for the first one. And obviously, you talked earlier about sales operations and this seamless kind of journey of taking the lead to customer and looking after them. So can you identify some key areas of that process that needed to be upgraded?
Perhaps one of the most simple was when the salesperson eventually signed the deal, an email was generated from Capsule, and that email was then taken by different people in the organization, whether it's account management to set up the account with the client details, whether it was finance to, again, key that information into another spreadsheet with the invoicing details and the contact number. So you've got something that's been created in a system by the salesperson and then exported, certainly in the case of our finance team, to a spreadsheet. We had a sales daybook. Invoices were then generated manually out of the back of that sales daybook. There was a renewal book, which was another Excel spreadsheet with when clients are due to renew. The account manager might then talk to the client, and the client wanted to change payment terms. moving from annual invoicing, which is where most of our clients were 3 years ago. COVID hit, a lot of people asked for delayed payment, and you end up with a system where the finance team sending out an invoice and the account management's agreed to move the client to quarterly payments or whatever. So the business was hit hard by COVID. We became quite disjointed, and Capsule had one record, the sales day book had another, and the the renewals book had a third copy of what was going on.
I was going to say, it's like the old-fashioned triplicate.
The advantage of the old-fashioned triplicate is unless you remove the carbon copy out of the middle and wrote 3 different things, it would say the same thing. But because we had just used HubSpot really as a replacement for Capsule, we hadn't integrated it into the 2 other areas. We ended up in spending endless hours trying to resolve at month end who should have been invoiced, who should have been paid, who had cancelled, who had delayed payment. And as I say, I joined the organisation full time around the time of COVID. And what we saw, the business was continuing to grow, but we saw a massive change in the way in which clients wanted to pay their subscriptions. Whereas before it was, you sign up with us, you've signed up for a year, you pay up front and you get access. There was all sorts of movements as people were trying to optimize their cash flow and trying to keep a record of where we were financially, who owed us what, became very, very complicated. So one of the things we also did was we moved to a fully integrated invoicing system, which was called SaaS Optics. They recently acquired another business and they've rebranded as Maxio, because in the 3 years I've been with the company, the number of clients we have has roughly doubled since COVID. Our revenues have roughly doubled, but our invoicing has gone up 4-fold because of that shift in the way in which clients pay in a subscription model.
So I suppose, Ollie, then the cost, if you like, the opportunity cost of not spending that time on processes and not thinking through what the implementation should look like resulted in a lot of friction, a lot of duplication, a lot of people wasting their time, and probably customers getting wrong invoices or not getting the invoices when they should have, and things like that.
Yeah, hopefully very little of the latter, but they may have received the odd chasing email when actually they'd paid and it hadn't been updated here and updated there. So I took over this area about 1.5 years ago, and I'm a great believer. I've got an engineering background. Most technologies are not used anywhere near their capability. So I sat back and I read some of the HubSpot stuff. I said, we should not be running that out of a spreadsheet. We shouldn't be running that out of a spreadsheet. We've just automated our invoicing. These systems must be able to talk to each other, which they most certainly do. And the efficiency gain, we estimate by starting to use HubSpot properly, we've gained efficiencies of around 10%. That's across a sales team of 6 or 7 and an account management team of 8 or 9. All those people are 10% more efficient. We have a finance team that is the same size as it was 3 years ago because everything is now pulled through and automated.
Wow, that's fantastic. Sometimes it's hard to quantify the benefits of a system like HubSpot in terms of those operational efficiencies. So thank you very much for doing that. So let's talk a little bit about what we did with you to help you get to this more streamlined kind of way of working.
We before we engaged with you at BBD, we did use another HubSpot recommended partner, which was an online only service. I'm not going to mention names, but they did a great job. And they were very good at fixing what I would call point faults, as in there's an error in this workflow, they'd look at it and they'd fix it. But what we realized was the integration to our Maxio product needed to be strengthened. And we were also moving from a single product company to a multi-product company. And what we had done when we moved from Capsule to HubSpot, as I say, was a lift and shift. Every single one of our clients signs up a new bit of business. So we had a sales or new business pipeline. And then a year later, we had a renewal pipeline. And the way we'd set that up was each renewal was a new deal. So a client, we're now 9 years old as an organization. We had clients in the system who had 8 deals. There was the initial deal and then 7 renewals. The people associated with each of those deals might be different because the personnel of the clients changed. Some of those deals may not be associated back to the company. So we were finding that the reporting we were getting out of HubSpot was not as accurate. Sorry, that's wrong. The reporting out of HubSpot was accurate based on what we put into it, but we needed, first of all, to fix that association problem. Got roughly 50,000 contacts in HubSpot. Some were not associated to deals, and deals were not associated to companies. Excuse me. And the other problem we faced is we were moving to multi-product. So one client with 8 deals in the system, and then we're about to launch a second product, we could see that trying to find which deal was associated with which client, with which company, which client and which contact was going to become a massive problem. And we didn't feel the online service would support us. So I went online and hunted around and came across you guys and a few others.
Yeah, and it's the sort of job that we love doing. I can imagine it sounds quite daunting to people that aren't used to those sorts of problems. But so tell us about how we worked alongside you, because I think one of the things we do pride ourselves on is trying to be part of the team, trying to work collaboratively, work as consultants as well as implementers. So how did that work for you?
Brilliantly. I think I might have provided a quote. I certainly sent an email to the 3 key people who worked with us afterwards saying, thank you for doing an outstanding job. But I added, it was an absolute pleasure working with them. It was a very collaborative effort. I remember when your solutions architect first came in, I did that sort of a Columbo moment where I took him down in the lift afterwards. And I'd been in an IT sales role beforehand. And we're going down in the lift. I said, can you really do what you've told me you're going to do for the amount you're going to charge us? And he said, yes, you've got a bird's nest of processes and workflows and misaligned associations. Our job is to straighten that out into the 4 or 5 key work streams that you have. And the fact that afternoon in the lift on the way out, and I said, so have you done this before? He said, yeah, we've done it a few times. It gave me the confidence that you're going to deliver. We therefore signed up. And I have to say, we have been staggered at the return we've already seen on the investment we made. And it was not a huge investment financially. I am so glad we made the decision when we did, which if I recall was about last November, because our business has continued to grow at 30%. If you've got a problem, fix it before it gets a bigger problem. I'm glad we're not fixing it now. We fixed it when we had 1,500 clients. We've now got 1,800. And we're just about to launch the second product.
That's great. Thank you very much for that feedback. And I suppose, what advice would you have for anybody, first of all, thinking about investing in HubSpot in a similar sort of industry to yourselves? And secondly, what advice would you have for them about implementing HubSpot so that it does what you actually want it to do rather than just being a bit of software off the shelf?
Okay, I would recommend reading what it can do and think through whether you can change your processes to match the HubSpot default processes. Because if you can change a process slightly and it's not going to that's not going to incur any inefficiencies in your business, what you are then benefiting from is HubSpot is developing software around, dare I say, its standardized version of a process for thousands of clients. And you will get any efficiency enhancements that HubSpot rolls out on a regular basis. That was a mistake we made. We said, right, here are our processes. They worked in Capsule. We're going to lift and shift Capsule and drop it into HubSpot without doing the research. For example, I am sure when we implemented HubSpot, it already talked to automated invoicing software. but we didn't think through that efficiency. So things were exported and rekeyed. There are many more things that we could do with HubSpot. At the moment, it's not a priority. We've said we're sticking to the commercial side. Another example would be document management. It's not a huge cost to our business, but we currently use a third-party electronic signature platform. If we had thought through, and we nearly moved to it in our work with you at BBD, you went to using the HubSpot version. Unfortunately, we can't at the moment because of one of our processes. If a client cancels on us for whatever reason and then comes back to us, the HubSpot standard process for that doesn't quite fit how we do things. So we're thinking how we can redesign our process, and then we can write off another, or rather stop paying another £9,000 a year invoice to a third party for basically electronic signature, because that's part of the HubSpot service.
And that's a really good point, actually, Ollie, because as you said, HubSpot have been doing this for 10, 15 years, developing the software for customer experience, from marketing to sales to customer success. I think they've seen quite a lot. And if people can think and learn from their standard processes and standard workflows, that's a huge shortcut. And also, I think you talked about essentially the investment in upfront when you do that implementation, so that you do really understand the full capability of HubSpot and then really think about your processes and how you want them implemented. And that I guess you would argue that investment, although sometimes it doesn't look good on the balance sheet or the costs, actually where you end up with it, having set it up properly, is a much better place than if you try to just muddle through yourself.
Absolutely. I suppose in a way you could compare HubSpot to outsourcing some software. If you're using an outsourced provider of any process, you're usually far better off sorting out your processes and delivering the efficiencies to yourself, and then turning around and going, right, I want to get the benefits of economies of scale or better pricing on any labor associated, rather than handing over the keys to the kingdom at the beginning. What we're lucky here, we're an owner-run business. The owner understood the logic of saying, well, hold on, let's just wait off a bit before we do this. In some, dare I say, larger organizations, there's a pressure to deliver this week, this month, and therefore people make the change before they've thought through how they could deliver some of the efficiencies themselves and change their processes to map to HubSpot or other providers.
Brilliant, Ollie. Can I just ask you to, I guess, just finish off and sum up what you say about HubSpot?
It isn't perfect. Otherwise, it sounds like some sort of infomercial. It is, we think, pretty damn good. It works for us. We know it works for lots of other organizations out there. And I think they're very good at rolling out developments if you flag you need a development. I'm going to criticize myself and our organization. At some stage, we were saying to HubSpot, well, it's absolutely crazy that the end date of a subscription can be before the start date. I can't even book a train fare where the return leg's before the outbound leg. And we had a robust debate until they pointed out that I wasn't using we as an organization weren't using their default fields. We'd set up our own fields. That to me is one of the examples of, find out what HubSpot does, and you probably find that it has something that will deliver to your processes as a business. Because although every business is unique, there's a lot of businesses that are very similar.
Brilliant. And finally, Ollie, can I just ask you to summarise what it's been like working with BBD Boom?
Why did we like working with you? Well, we chose you partly because you and I ended up in a conversation and we discovered that you really knew our business. You listened, you knew our business, you happened to work in our business and used one of our competitors, I believe, in a previous role. And that, in many ways, was the final decision point for us. Just as we know our clients who have actually used a media database before are usually easier clients to work with because they understand the limitations. That's how we chose you. Why we have recently re-engaged you on an ongoing basis is the service we got. I work with lots of suppliers. We as an organisation, the team's all out there, we all work with lots of suppliers. There was a real sense of camaraderie with BBD Boom. Your team really wanted to solve our problems. I also run the finances. I cannot believe, and I perhaps shouldn't be saying this to you, the return that we are already seeing on the investment we made with you. The marketing team estimate they're somewhere between 10 and 15% more efficient. The account management team, 10% more efficient. The sales team, because of that little thing I mentioned around we can't quite move away from a document management system, they reckon their efficiency is 5 to 7%.
Brilliant. That's lovely to hear, Ollie. Thank you very much for that feedback. Thanks for talking to me. And we look forward to continue to working with you.
Pleasure, Adam. Speak soon.